This time I watched Neko no Ongaeshi, or The Cat Returns, which came out in 2002, and spoiler warning. So funny thing about this movie, I actually hadn't seen it before yesterday when I'm writing this, but I actually realized that I had seen clips from this film used in an AMV a little while back, so I did know some stuff about what was going to happen in the movie going into it. Like that Haru would be taken to the cat kingdom and she'd be turning into a cat. Whether that made me enjoy the film more or less, I can't really say, I just figured I'd mention it. First thing I want to point out about this movie, and the most prominent thing I noticed while watching, was its relatively low ambition, and that isn't inherently a bad thing. The characters are extremely simple, they spell out the plot and themes of the film in nearly the most direct way possible, and plot points come and go with almost no build-up or narrative weight. Basically, this seems like a movie made with children as its singular target audience, and I'm not gonna lie, I do think that prevents it from being better in my eyes, but I also can't feel disappointed in the film for this because, again, I don't feel like the movie is trying to appeal to all ages. I mean, the main villain says like fiddlesticks or something when he gets beaten by Baron in a sword fight. Obviously, this isn't trying to be another Spirited Away. And I think that the film does a really good job at communicating its intentions early on, which makes it an enjoyable movie to just let wash over you, being a good vehicle for a handful of moments in the film that are memorable all by themselves. For example, when the Cat King has the dining entertainment thrown out of the palace window, I couldn't help but think of "You Threw Me Off My Groove" from The Emperor's New Groove. In fact, that movie only came out 2 years before The Cat Returns, so who knows, maybe this cut was partially inspired by The Emperor's New Groove. Or when Baron says something like how when people put their entire heart into a piece of art, it comes alive, which is why he and the Raven are alive, and of course I have to point out that Baron uses the same character design as the cat statue from Whisper of the Heart, which is clearly meant to imply that Shizuku from Whisper of the Heart made Baron come alive through her love and artistic passion, which I absolutely love for reasons I spelled out in my video about Whisper of the Heart. Like, how often does the story of a film you love get expanded in some way in a completely separate film? So I don't think The Cat Returns is amazing, but it does kind of make me enjoy what has been my favorite Ghibli film to date even more, which is awesome. Or the multiple animation cuts of Muta just running and looking like an absolute unit. Speaking of animation cuts, there were certainly a few moments in the film that I wouldn't be surprised to see on Sakugaboru, particularly when Haru hits her alarm clock at the beginning of the film, and when Baron duels the cat guards with his cane in the third act. Overall, though, the quality of animation isn't really up to the standards set by the rest of the Studio Ghibli movies, and yes, that is a very high bar to meet. Plus, I'm pretty confident that this film is similar to The Ocean Waves in that it was probably made by the less veteran members of the studio, and probably on a much lower budget than the likes of Mononoke, Totoro, and Porco Rosso. Even still, the aesthetic of the film is something I totally vibe with. I really like Haru's character design. It feels like a sort of precursor to the style that Kyoto Animation would later become known for, which is really cool. The movie is very bare bones, but Haru's design alone made it noticeably more fun to watch just because I love to see her emote in all sorts of different ways in response to the different situations she gets thrown into. And while I'm on the note of Haru's design, I should also mention that it was fun to see her visual transformation from human to cat in a gradual manner throughout the film. First, she gains ears and a paw, and then a whiskers and a tail and a bit of a snout, and all the while she appears to be getting more and more fur. It's kind of like seeing those human to anthro to furry to animal character charts, but in a real movie that exists and was made by professional people, which I think is kind of funny and pretty neat. Also, just throwing this in there, she looked really good in that green top and dress at the end of the movie. Oh my god. Completely unrelated topic, I've been tagging all the anime that have bus-chan in them. If you don't know, bus-chan is kinda a meme in the anime community in reference to the cliche that is all too common in a lot of modern generic trashy shows, where the main character gets hit by a bus, truck, car, etc. is a lazy way of increasing tension. The idea is that bus-chan is a character in themselves, and it travels from anime to anime with the sole purpose of running over characters and then moving on to the next show. And after making countless bus-chan jokes with my friends, I have come to find this trope absolutely hilarious to the point that I start actively applauding and cheering whenever Bus-chan shows up in an anime. And The Cat Returns kinda has a Bus-chan moment, except the main character doesn't get hit by the bus, so I got to thinking about what counts as a Bus-chan show and what doesn't. At first I figured that the character had to actually get hit by the bus for it to count, but after watching The Cat Returns and seeing this cut, I don't think it would be in the spirit of Bus-chan to exclude a scene like this. So now I think I'm going going to say that it counts as a bus-chan show if it has this shot in it, whether or not the character gets hit by the automobile or not. Everything I've just said about bus-chan has nothing to do with the rest of this video and is completely arbitrary, but it matters to me, so there you go. Anyway, there was one moment in the film where Haru looks up at Baran and blushes, and later when she learns that the boy she had a crush on is single, she's like, I am over him, and it's obviously meant to call back to her feelings for Baran. And all this made me think about how The Cat Returns, as well as many other movies and shows, seem to include romance just for the sake of itself, and comparatively how many of Studio Ghibli's movies lack romance despite frequently having a young female and male character as leads. I feel like the whole including romance just for the sake of itself comes from most cultures seeing romantic relationships as more valuable than platonic ones. I mean, most cultures operate under monogamy. It's very unusual to have multiple romantic partners, but it's totally normal to have tons of close friends, which might be why people see romantic relationships as a sort of step up from platonic ones, which isn't necessarily the case. It very much can be, obviously. It depends from person to person, but you get what I mean. Anyways, looking back on all the shows that I've seen and all the forced romances I've seen, I wonder if all those relationships might have been artificially created because the characters knew that most audience members would think that it's a happy ending as long as the main guy and girl got together. Or just as likely, they believe that themselves. Obviously, this also applies to queer relationships, but let's be honest, it's usually the guy and the girl. And again, I'm not saying any of this to downplay how important romantic relationships can be to a person, it's just that I've kinda gained a new respect for Studio Ghibli because out of the movies I've seen so far, they've more often than not chose to keep their two protagonists platonic. And I really appreciate that, especially considering that I grew up on shows like Avatar, Danny Phantom, Fairy Tail, and Sword Art Online. And all of them virtually take it as prerequisite that the main and female leads have at least some amount of romance firmly embedded in their relationship just as a matter of course. But I never really had any crushes as a kid, and I always thought I was kinda weird because of that, so I guess the fact that The Cat Returns plays into that trope a little bit helped me realize something that I really like about the other Ghibli films, so I'm thankful for that. One last thing I wanted to mention about The Cat Returns is that it does a lot of telling and not a lot of showing, which makes certain acts of the movie pretty slow. Plus, it's not like all that dialogue is really in service of much for reasons I described earlier about this seeming to be a movie aimed at kids. I actually had a friend join in watching the film with me about halfway through, and when they did, I paused and gave a plot summary of the movie up until then, and I definitely feel like they got just about as much out of the film as I did by the end of it. But thankfully, the movie doesn't overstay its welcome at all with its runtime clocking in at just a bit over an hour, so even the slower scenes didn't drag down the movie that much for me. Overall, I'd say I enjoyed The Cat Returns, even if just barely. I know I keep saying this, but it really does feel like children were the much intended audience for this film. It would probably be a great film to put on TV while you're getting ready for work or cooking dinner or something, but that's obviously not how I'm approaching these movies, so it is what it is. I'd give it a light 6 out of 10. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this installment of Watching Every Ghibli Movie. I would absolutely love to hear what you guys have to say about The Cat Returns down in the comments. I know I say that in every video, but this series genuinely has the best comment section out of any content on my channel. Everyone is always so nice and happy to share their thoughts as well as interesting information about whatever movie I'm talking about that I didn't previously know, so I just wanted to take the time to thank you guys for that. Anyway, next time I'm gonna be watching Howl no Ugoku Shiro, or Howl's Moving Castle, but until then, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.